So in this video, we'll be doing factoring by grouping. So factoring polynomials by grouping. And essentially what that means is we'll take this idea here and we'll just create two groups. X cubed minus 3x squared is our first group. And then our second group is plus 6x minus 18. And I'm trying to figure out which of these factored expressions is equivalent. And maybe there's more than one. Well, in the purple group, they both have at least two x's. So I'm going to rewrite that down here as x squared times what's left. Well, they had 3 x's here. I've used 2. There's 1 left. They had 2 x's here. I used both of them. There's only a minus 3 left. That's now factored. The blue section, which we'll add on, they both have a 6, so I'll bring that out. I've used the 6. There's an x left. I've used the 6 here. 18 divided by 6 is 3, so I just have a minus 3 left. Now, both of these terms share an x minus 3, so I can factor out the x minus 3, and I'm left with x squared plus 6. So this is an option. It shows up right here. So C is going to be one of my correct answers. Do not get it confused with B. Then at this point, I need to factor it again, it looks like. So this x squared plus 6, they want factored down. And what I can do here is I can just do a difference of squares. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite that over here. And before I spend too much time rewriting it, what I really want to do first is I want to talk about difference of squares identity. We've seen this before, but I want to do it again. So a squared minus b squared is equal to a minus b times a plus b. You'll remember that from several lessons ago. So essentially what we're doing is we're saying, well, in our problem we have x squared plus 6, but I'm going to go ahead and change that to x squared minus negative 6. Now I have the difference sign. And then rather than saying this is negative 6, I'm going to change that so that it's x squared minus the square root of negative 6 squared. So now I've made it to where they both have squares. And if you want to walk through those steps, again, you want to pause and walk through those steps again. Essentially what I did is I rewrote the problem, then I wrote it with a double negative, then I wrote it with a square root squared. So those 3 steps will get you set up. So write the problem, rewrite it as a double negative, and rewrite it as a square root squared. Now at this point, I can go ahead and convert using this formula up here. I know that it's going to be x minus the square root of negative 6 times x plus the square root of negative 6. Again, that's just using this formula. A is x and b is the square root of negative 6 because that's what's being squared. So now I have these two factors, and of course we know from a previous lesson that I need to rewrite these as imaginary numbers. So I have x minus the square root of 6i and x plus the square root of 6i. So I can rewrite that over here in my original problem, this original blue problem. And I can say this is x minus 3, but rather than this x squared plus 6, I'm going to rewrite it as its factored form, which is x minus the square root of 6i times x plus the square root of 6i. And then I go ahead and I look up here and I see which one has those factors. Well, this is 6i, but it does not have the square root, so I'm not going to use that one. This has the square root, but it does not have the I. I'm not going to use that one. And then this one has x plus the square root of 6i, that's this term here. X minus the square root of 6i, that's this term here. And then x minus, that 2 should be a 3. Should be a 3. Okay, so this one won't work either, but I made a typo and it should have been a 3, so that would have worked had this been a 3. That's just a typo in my creation of the question. So again, I want you to just pretend like this x minus 2 here was actually an x minus 3. That's just a typo that I made in the key, so we also want it to be E. If that last part's not confusing, x minus 2 to x minus 3, that's just an error, a typo error, x minus 3. Other than that, this should look pretty straightforward. Good luck.